The first time you and I opened Elden Ring absolutely excited with what would be delivered by this amazing company, I'm sure that we had the same reaction at the moment we opened the gates to Lingrave and came across with a beautiful view of the Erdtree and the amazing world that awaited us. Everything gave us goosebumps. The first tree sentinel that scared a lot of newcomers away, even though nobody needed to kill him at the beginning. The fantasy scenario that seemed straight out of a book. The feeling of discovery every corner of the map would provide us. And a lot of other elements that surprised us at first sight. So when I finished my adventures on the lands between, I honestly thought that the game could never amaze me again like it did when I first played. So much so that when the announce of the DLC came out, my expectations were not as high as everyone else. But I forgot that we were talking about From Software. And since Demon Souls, you can agree or not, but these motherfuckers never failed us. So it was when the first trailer of the DLC came out that it came to my realization. It seemed surreal. It looked like a whole different game, but it was just a DLC, you know. And at the moment I saw all of those scenarios and bosses, I knew that it was gonna be amazing. So when the day of the release came, with all my excitement, I opened the game, killed Mog again, touched Miquela's hand, and there I was in the Shadow Realm. And I don't know about y'all, but at the moment I left the cave you spawning, I felt it again. All of the feelings of when I left the gates to Lingrave from the first time I played the Elden Ring, they came to me again. I mean, the feeling that I thought it would stay in my heart forever once again was there. The excitement of discovery. Discovering everything once more. The biomes, the enemies, the bosses, the soundtracks, and the stories. And it was through a view that From Software already showed us how they are extremely good at what they do. Like, you can see how Gravesite playing, although remembering Lingrave at first sight and having like the same idea of being a giant graveyard, it still presents us its own originality through the colors and environment. Like, you can notice how everything seems darkened as we are indeed in a Shadow Realm. Like, at the same time that the field appears to be burned and dry, it works as a great contrast with the first mesmer flames we see around the realms. It looks just magnificent. And not only Gravesite gives us this type of newness feeling, but all of the other biomes and locations found in the Shadow Realm has their own life that completely unrelates with all the locations found in the base game. In other words, every scenario is new. And that's exactly where I start talking about the regions in the Realms of Shadow. The Shadow Realm gives us 7 different major regions, and as you can see on the map, 5 minor regions that simply links with the other ones. And as I said before, each one of these regions managed to be completely new and distant from what we saw in the base game. And also, each one has a stunning view that represents the dangers found on the region itself and the story surrounding it. Started by Gravesite Plain, for example, it's the region that welcomes the player into the realm in the most pleasant way possible, with a fucking ninja goat man, a giant for the skull. Well, although looking tough, these are the least of your problems in this DLC. And that's exactly what Gravesite Plains felt to me. Like a little area of peace before a turbulent storm that this DLC will become in the future, as it is indeed the first area. Gravesite Plain doesn't offer that much trouble to you, just like Lingrave, for example. But although not being an area of constant dangers and enemies, it still has its own charm. Like, can we talk about how purely genius it was for the developers to put a first furnace golem in the region, creating an amazing contrast between the golem's fire and with the whole area colors, as the giant golem call out for your attention at the moment you lay your eyes on him. And that's not only because it is indeed a fucking giant golem, but it's because the colors on the place force you to instantly focus on it. And as you keep exploring Gravesite, the enemies start to prepare you for the next area, of which, although keeping the same environment and colors, in my perspective that choice was to emphasize the presence of the best boss in the DLC for me. And I'm talking about Mesmer and the region of Escado Altos. I mean, the whole region is full of Black Knights and some of the minor soldiers from the Mesmer army that has one thing in common. All of those knights uses Mesmer flames, with even the dogs being imbued by it. And at the moment that you put your feet on Escado Altos, all of your attention goes directly to the giant black fortress, making you feel invited to enter it and explore the corners of the keep. And that's the beauty of it all, because as you keep climbing to the top of the castle, the flames that started appearing back then with the knights and soldiers start to appear oftenly through the cultists present in the keep until you reach the very owner of the flame, Mesmer itself. But that's like the very top of Escado Altos. Now if you decide to be led by your curiosity and goes down to the keep, a secret area is unraveled. I'm talking about hinterlands. And maybe the unexpected absence of any type of enemies may shock most players, who'd call it a bad design or a completely wasted potential. But for those who understand the whole lore behind it, they know that it is supposed to be the most peaceful place in the realms, since it was there where the creator of all the family matters we witnessed during the game lore born, America itself and the Shaman Village. Honestly, I think that the Shaman Village makes your way to hinterlands worth every second by rewarding you with not items or bosses, but with a completely special place that somehow offers you peace among the chaotic world. And it's truly amazing and mesmerizing, you know. Like the gold field represents the sacredness of the entire place, alongside the soundtrack with very little notes playing on the background creates this harmonical space with peacefulness. But well, where there's peace, there's also chaos, always trying to overtake the world in its most magnificent place. And just like a lot of tales spread the message about curiosity being the evolution disaster on the living beings, here things are no different. Since once you are led by your own curiosity to explore the Shadow Realm, it is through some secret place that you get yourself into the Abyssal Woods. An unlikely Shaman Village, where it was the beginning of everything, this is the end of the fucking world, man. Honestly, Abyssal Woods is my favorite area of the DlC, and the reasons for that are, although being an entire region, the game takes away from you one of the most precious things for you to succeed on your adventure, to force you to walk on the entire creep and terrifying place, just like it is telling you to immerse into that kind of horror game. Also, Abyssal Woods imports the feelings we had in the subterranean shunning grounds on the base game to an entire region in the DLC, and the atmosphere it managed to immerse you as everything seems fucked up and disastrous makes me wonder how cool it would be if From Software decided to legitimately create another Souls title for real, since Dark Souls and Bloodborne, specifically Bloodborne, can be considered as a horror game for some people, but we know that the only thing that horrifies us is losing a great amount of souls, right? But maybe that wish will stay only inside of my head. Now going back to Abyssal Woods, I honestly think that the area, although being a great adding, could have been more explored since it's quite small, you know, and quickly surpass it. But the little moments still manage to keep you significantly horrified, with the unkillable enemies that never stop chasing you once they see you, and the creepy soundtrack playing on the background, perfectly matching the environmental feelings of the region, resembling a horror title for a brief moment. Now when we get to Midra's Mansion, all of that horrific atmosphere just goes away, and the games go back to be Elden Ring once again. Like, I think especially the mansion, which is a closed place, could be used to cause some claustrophobic feelings on the players by inserting more terrifying enemies, turning the entire place into a true horror experience. Like, it still missed something, you know what I'm saying? But overall, it's just like I said, Abyssal Woods keeps being my favorite area of the DLC due to the attempt of modifying the genre of it. Now leaving the abyss, we go to the region right above it, where the primordial beast of the lands lives, or used to live, since most of the dragons found in Jagged Peak are basically dead. And I don't know if anyone else noticed, but this region of Jagged Peak is absent of any living creature except for the dragons, and well, the slimes. Before you say anything, like, I think that decision shows how this was a true home of dragons in the lands, and how no other creature would dare to be in the same place as them. It also tells you through the context of the scenario that their only enemies were their own species, or the so-called dragon hunters, but not even the hunters were able to face one single dragon found at the peak of that gigantic mountain. Well, no hunter except for you and the legendary Egon. right? But then linked to Jagged Peak, after surpassing the Dragon Community Fireplace, we have one of the most beautiful places in the game, Cerulean Coast. Now, although being a little area, its design makes it worth every second you spend on it. It has the blue particles floating in the air alongside the blue grass field, and the giant coffins spread across the entire region makes it harmonical and full of mystery to make you wonder what are those giant coffins and who were they held, you know. And I love the fact that the area is located nearby the ocean, as the blue color of both fields mix up with each other beautifully. And all of those mysteries on the region are explained when you come across with the Purchasant at night, whose existence is due to the mix of the flesh, probably coming from the dead bodies of those giant coffins, with Trina's nectar that created the knight who swore to defend Trina from any danger coming up. Unfortunately, little he knew about our intentions, forcing us to execute him anyways. Now for the last region, we have the ancient ruins of Ra, which is the rest of what seemed to be a civilization from even before America itself. You can notice through the debris and structures you find everywhere that it was indeed once inhabited by probably Ra itself and his civilization. But now all that is left are some of the supposed ancient knights of the rain, and the sealed structure unlocked only when we burned the tree that seemed to be sealing the fortress through its own shadow, you know. And in the end, the last minor region, Inner Ealing, is revealed to be the preserved remains of Ra ruins, and the place where Mikala decided to hide himself behind all of those Gandir bird clones and the light cultists. And just like I said before, all of those regions from the DLC feels completely new and unique, full of stories that are simply told by the scenario and atmosphere of those places. Now, as we keep exploring all the regions, we always end up facing the main bosses present in it, which is the next topic I want to talk about now, the bosses. From ever since From Software started developing this DLC, I knew already that the bosses in it would be as hard as anything ever made by their hands. I mean, we're talking about the same guys who made Orphan of a Cause and Gale after all. From Software never cared to spare the players from the DLC difficulties, and honestly, it couldn't be any different in here.
Mongrel Intruder. That tarnished, it seemeth.
The best part about From Software bosses is that they take care of every little detail, from the cutscenes to the character design, to make it feel truly unique and remarkable for us, the players. And personally, the bosses in this DLC felt more remarkable for me than the ones present in the base game. I loved every single Mayhem boss fight, as it would not only offer me the challenge of fighting a god, a creature, or just a remembrance of what once was a lord, but also because each fight has their own way to reflect the personality of the specific boss through the scenario, the soundtrack, the movesets, and the stages we advance in it. I mean, none of these bosses feel like they were made just to be on extra content. They were crafted from the beginning to be presented as a really special encounter you'll have in the world. Now, let me tell you the exact feelings I had with each one of these bosses. The Dancing Lions, as the first boss you probably face, already prepares you for all of the other bosses you encounter afterwards, as it gives you a glimpse of the DLC difficulty. And his inspirations on the dancing dragons for the Chinese culture is not only set by the look, but also on his moveset, as he keeps the dance with you during the entire fight. And I must say that the sound design of his introduction cutscene is honestly amazing, as it starts with the rumbling sound of a beast waking up after a long sleep until it releases its powerful and menacing roar towards the Tarnished. Relena, as I stated on my video about her, it starts with you taking her as just another boss fight, but as I kept dying over and over again for the same mistakes, my perception on the fight changed completely, and I realized it was never supposed to be a boss fight from the beginning, but a dance of which I'll have to learn the entire choreography to finally succeed in the last presentation. And the whole scenario told me about the dance. since it's like they set the circular stage on the middle on purpose to make you feel invited to dance on the stage. Not to mention her smooth movements towards us, the soundtrack playing in the background, the sounds of her footstep and blades syncing with the sounds of your rollings and attacks. It all combines to create the perfect features of an actual dance. Mesmer has such an amazing setup before you even meet him, as the entire time you're exploring the Shadowlands, as I said before, fragments of his presence can be found everywhere, from the torches, flames that some knights carries to an actual crafting item for you to use. And when you finally happen to meet him, the game managed to overcome your own expectation with an amazing cutscene that shows how at the same time that Mesmer looks fragile and little compared to the other bosses, his dialogues and actions towards you reveal how truly menacing he can be, since he was sealed by his own mother to be apart from the lands between. And everything about this boss absolutely mesmerized me, if you know what I mean. From the design that remembers the Japanese folklore about the snake man, mixed up with the whole armor styles used by the Romans. He also has his unique flame type that looks absolutely beautiful compared to any other flame in the game, in my opinion. His voice dubbing being so calm and majestic at the same time, and the movesets which turn out to be the funniest to learn among all of the other bosses. Mesmer became simply my favorite boss of Elden Ring and one of my favorite in the entire Soulsborne franchise. Midgar as the necessary missing piece for those who fell in love with the concept of the frenzy flames that honestly could have more emphasis in this game. It all starts with a horrific presentation that represents the madness within someone who gave up on everything to become a lord once, not even care if they're gonna sacrifice their own body and mentality to do so, followed up by the blasphemous profane act of unleashing the power of a forbidden being inside of what seemed to be a church once, are just some of the reasons why I think Midgar is one of the best boss in the game. It also contains a soundtrack that is epic and horrific at the same time, resembling Bloodborne in some kind of way, while it expresses the horrors of the frenzied flame. We have Baal being the best boss fight in terms of epicness. You start to hear about his name before even getting to Jagged Peak from Egon, as he curses the creature with all the anger he could have in his heart, making you wonder about how powerful and merciless such a creature can be. And on the way to the top of the Jagged Peak, the whole region managed to show you the absurd power of the creature, as all the dragons found on the region are dead except for a few ones, and no other creature dares to live nearby it. Then once you enter the arena, you finally understand the gravity of the situation. With an absolutely unique design and power, Baal can be easily considered as one of the best dragons in the Soulsborne franchise. The idea of a dragon that summons his own wings is purely amazing. A dragon that, despite having such an enormous size, is faster than a lot of tiny creatures found in the game, which explains why he is the only one alive and the only one feared by everyone. And this is a fight where summoning an NPC just complements the entire experience, since Egon gives you more reason to kill the dragon. And for the end, we have Radahn as the unexpected final boss for most people. With a fight that tests all of your skills and learnings, Radahn do not take it easy on the Tarnished, not even for a little second, as in the fight you are constantly worried about yours and his next moves. Radahn is a boss fight that shuts the mouth of those who were complaining on the game difficulties and those who were worried about From Software making their game easier. Radahn is a redemption card to everyone that felt insulted with the base game Radahn's nerf, and also a proof of Mog's innocence. And I gotta say that he has my second most favorite soundtrack in the game, which perfectly represents the ending of an amazing adventure. Now all of these bosses makes you sweat, break your controller, breathe deeply from each death, and make you rethink about your own life at their first stage. But as if it wasn't enough, they all have a second stage. And there, you know what despair means. As they all reach full potential, they all unlock new ways.
Do I
to absolutely destroy you. The dancing lions becomes the beast of elements, mastering the power of thunder, air, and ice. It dances around you with each one of the elements, presenting a harmonical festival and inducing you to dance alongside it. Relana pulls up the meaning of her name, as one of the blades are imbued with the power of Moon, the same Moon from her twin sister, and the other one with an unrequited love that she doesn't accept the idea of forgetting it. And what until now was just a practice of the whole choreography becomes the real presentation on stage. Mesmer takes out the seal set by his own mother and breaks it to finally unleash his true power, and the snakes that were just a part of his visual design until now becomes the real threat for the rest of the fight. Midra reveals why he was the Lord of Frenzied Flame once and sets the whole scenario. You two are fighting it on fire, an orange strong fire that covers your eyes completely, a fire that drove millions into madness and converted lost souls in the lands to Frenzied Flame cult. Baal shows his true dragon form and commands the thunder fires in order to destroy the hunters who are offering him a real trouble after a long time, become the thunderstorm that haunts the entire Jagged Peak region. Radahn pulls out the mastermind behind all of that puppet concert we witnessed until now, revealing Miklas to be the complete opposite of what we thought he was, and by uniting the power of gravity from the general with the power of persuasion and holiness from Miklas, the game offers us the final and ultimate challenge, a fight between a tarnished, a god, and a lord. And obviously we cannot forget about all of the other bosses that in some kind of way offered us a bad time. Well, the difficulty in the DLC became a real thing for a lot of people, especially for those who had Elden Ring as the first Soulsborne game, right? And I ain't gonna lie, the game is harder than ever in here. But that was expected since I've experienced those challenges before in some other DLC from From Software. And I mean, it will not make any sense if they released a DLC that is easier than the base game, right? But just like I said on my previous video about Radahn, which became kinda controversial since a lot of the real Soulsborne fans felt offended by my opinions, which is good because they all gave me engagement, although I know 80% of them have not watched the entire video to understand my point, but that's just how the world works, right? I'll repeat here what I said there. The biggest problem of the DLC itself in terms of difficulty is Radahn, and maybe a lot of people got so frustrated by having to face him at the end game that blame it the entire DLC for it, when in reality the real problems is purely the last boss, specifically his second stage, of which if I had to describe it with one word, it would be bullshit. Now apart from that, the overall difficulty in the DLC is not the monster we see some people stating. I mean, the game gives you all the features to make it enjoyable and easier, and by playing the right cards at the right time, even Radahn can become easier, you know, turning the entire DLC into a walk in the park. Now we gotta remember that this is not Dark Souls, where you need to prove yourself a brave warrior but fight every enemy alone. No, this is fucking Elden Ring, and it gives you another mechanics to explore. Like, even the creator of this fucking game used this mechanic, why should I not use it, you know? Like, that's the problem with the real fans of the Soulsborne. They seem to not understand that and consider this shit as Dark Souls 4. But well, someday I'll release a video about this trash community full of the same toxicity found in Blighttown just to watch the world burn while they all give me engagement. Now let's be realistic here. After all, this DLC felt better than multiple AAA titles that have been released over the couple of years, and you gotta admit it. No doubt that everyone is enjoying it and have the wish to return to the older From Software titles like Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3. Like, the DLC managed to deliver more than just an additional content, with hours of playthrough and discovering that doesn't feel boring like Ubisoft titles. In this video, I basically emphasized both things I love the most, that are the bosses and the environment, but it has like plenty of new weapons variety to make us keep creating new save just to test them out. I cannot also forget to mention the soundtrack of the DLC that, oh god, my orgasm level went as high as possible. Each boss soundtrack sounds absolutely fucking amazing and individual, and in my opinion, it completely smashes the base game soundtrack. To name my 3 favorite ones, I'll go with the OST from Mesmer, Red Dawn, and Bale, as each one perfectly fits its own boss fights, but let's be real that all of the soundtrack are simply amazing. And the art design stays impeccable. I mean, it's so awesome how Elden Ring doesn't have the most realistic graphics in the game history, but the art design of the world makes the graphic looks 10 times better than anything else. Like, it's just real, you know. So overall, Shadow of the Erdtree is basically a full game disguised as a DLC for almost half the price of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, for example, and you'll have access to a new world full of good content for you to play for hours. And by playing this DLC, you'll notice how FromSoft does not make games to sell, but instead they craft a piece of art for you to buy it and enjoy every second. And still there are some crazy people complaining about it, but well, you cannot please everyone, right? Well, in the end, I consider this, in my opinion, as the best DLC ever made in history. Like, never in my entire life I wanted to wake up like an addicted crackhead just to play a fucking DLC, bro. It felt just like the first time I played the base game, which I thought it was impossible to happen again. And I hope some companies learn from it and actually give us good reason to spend more money on the same game, you know. But that was the video for y'all. It took me almost 1 month to finish. It took me 1 month to finish. And well, part of the reason is because I have to work. Like, I still don't receive anything for this video, but since I like making it, I'll keep doing it. So thank for your patience to wait for this video, and until Sunday.